All right, here are our presenters today. We have Richard Barnes with C. Richard Barnes and Associates. We have John McNerney with MCAA. He's the General Counsel and Legislative Advocate of our national organization. We have Sid, who was introduced earlier, but the District Council 16 Business Manager and Financial Secretary Treasurer. We have Mike Layden, District Council 16 Assistant Business Manager. John Odom, the CPMCA President and Murray Company President. And finally, myself, the Executive Director of CPMCA. All right, well, CPMC and District Council 16, we call this Controlling Our Industry's Future. And we sat down last fall, I believe it was October, our negotiating committees, and tried to negotiate a successor agreement. And I will turn this over to John because he opened up negotiations in the right fashion, and he'll explain what he said and how he said it.
Yeah, actually, I'd just like to say that Mark Breslin, what a great presentation that he just put on. And from his presentation that he just put on here today, we 2 years ago got to hear this speech. And we started actually 2 years ago looking at this market and looking to make changes. So this isn't something that just happened overnight. But opening this up, one of the things that we wanted to really express to everyone is that we were here to work on our market share to be able to compete against the non-union and grow our market share back. And that is do that without lowering that journeyman wage. And I want everyone to understand that. We were not to lower the journeyman wage. What we were there to do was to get an increase in that journeyman's wage, but also be competitive in a market against the non-union. And that's exactly what our proposal was that we put together and how we opened up the meeting. So,
if you look at that and think about, and that was the opening statement that management made to us. I'm been blessed to know John for 42 years. We started as apprentices together. So, first of all, I have a lot of trust in him just because I know him. I've known him all my life, or all my adult life anyway. And when they open with that kind of a statement, that's pretty profound about your labor partners and what they're hoping to do and come away with in a bargaining unit. Now, it didn't mean that we weren't concerned and we weren't worried about where things were going. We're in the worst economic times that we've ever seen in our industry. But coupled with that, we had the problems of not only did we have massive unemployment, but we actually had a situation where, and Mark went over this, about the retiring baby boomers. Now, as most of you know, we've actually set up a lot of things to take care of increasing the amount of training available for the new participants entering into our industry. We've built a new training center, opened it up last year. We went to daytime training for first and second year apprentices. At the time when we were all talking about this, we had 1,850 apprentices in training, okay?
Yeah, and one key facet up here before we go down too far, you've heard from labor and you've heard from management, but also up here with us is Richard Barnes, and we came into a relationship with Richard back in 2005 to facilitate our negotiations, and then brought him back in 2010. And I wanted to introduce Richard and let him address his perspective of our labor management relationship, how it does separate from a lot of other groups, and have him chime in on the negotiations before we go into the details of negotiations.
Thank you a lot, Chip. I appreciate it, and thank you very much for the invitation to come and be with you today. For those of you that don't know my background and see a strange face sitting here, I'm a former federal mediator. I was the director of the Federal Mediation Service during President Clinton's term in office, and spent a number of years trying to mediate labor disputes in this country, and was most fortunate to meet both Sid and Chip back in 2005, as he said, and to begin to build a relationship with these gentlemen. And I was quite impressed with what their attitudes were then, and I'm more impressed with them today as it comes to trying to change the labor management relationship. I think that most of the times I go into labor management relationships around the country, and I probably see as many as Mark does. He does a lot of work that he does. I do a lot of hands-on, usually facilitation work and mediation work once the parties begin to try and change the way they interact with one another. And most times when I go into the labor management context, what I get is that They're after a regime change. They're not after behavioral changes. They're after regime change. Well, if we just rid ourselves of this union rep, or if we just rid ourselves of this chapter exec, things will be okay. Well, to all of you in the room, I hope you listened closely to what Mark Breslin said today. He is 100% on target. And I think when you leave here today, you need to keep in mind what every aspect of his presentation. What impressed me with these two gentlemen were neither one were after regime change. They were after behavioral changes. They have taken a gigantic step toward improving and trying to correct the course of labor management relationships in this country. There is no place else in the United States that has done what you've done here.
When we sat down to negotiate, this was our first slide, and I believe it'll be used later today as well, but it addresses really market share and where we were trying to go. Market share can only increase if the contractor is profitable. The contractor is only profitable by being competitive in part by higher productivity and improved management practices. And superior management practices can only be achieved by a collaborative approach between union contractors and the union to increase profitability, productivity, and increasing overall competitiveness and ultimately market share. So these words that are underlined are the common theme throughout this presentation. We're going to go back to 2005 when we sat down and negotiated the contract, which was at that time really a pretty out of the box. We had 8 different items we hit. First of all, our goal was to extend the contract through June 30th, 2011, which we did. Increase market share, increase the contractor's competitiveness, improve the contractor's productivity, improve the union members' quality of life, and I believe that contract was, what, 22% over a 5-year period of increases. Improve the ability to recruit new members, and ensure the viability of the trust funds, which was accomplished. In 2005, we increased competitiveness by 3 items. One was we instilled portability in the contract. What we've sort of said we shouldn't say, but 8 hours of work for 8 hours pay, which we'll skip over that quickly, and apprenticeship ratios. At that time, we implemented 1 journeyman to 1 apprentice on public works, and 1 journeyman to 1 apprentice and to 1 pre-apprentice on private works. Changed the collective bargaining agreement that worked in the public and private market without lowering the journeyman wage, and in fact increasing their wage over a 3-year period. So we tried to implement a blueprint in the public and private which would double the market share in 10 years, which is 2022. Upon achievement, the union market share in our industry would be 50% of the market, and this objective would be increasing 10 million man-hours, which, when you look at that, it's a big hurdle.
I really appreciate this opportunity. I work at the National MCA. One of my jobs is to staff our executive committee and the UA's executive committee's strategic planning committee. Steve Lamb is here from MCA of Chicago, and he facilitates that. And over the years, our executive committee and the UA and SIDS group, and SIDS on that committee, have done a lot of good work. We worked out the drug testing program together. We commented on the standard for excellence, the standard for safety, the foreman training manual. We do a lot of collaboration in the legislature on Davis-Bacon project labor agreements. We're working on these new accounting rules and the pension funding. So we've done a lot of that from the top down. But what we're seeing here today, I think, is a new order of thinking and leadership from management and labor in terms of their duty of fair representation to the industry. After Mark's presentation, when you hear these gentlemen talking about, they're really looking way down the road into the demographics of this industry and the entire economy. That is really the sort of the highest exercise of responsibility to keep this system working for all of us. You know, when Mark said that the pension system depends on the health and vibrancy of the workforce, I mean, that's really what it's all about. So I'm here to learn and take this back to our strategic committee. I mean, I can't say I've heard anything as forward thinking as looking into the demographic and economic prospects of the industry long-term in structuring your representation of all your members with that in mind. I mean, that's, my job here is to write this down and take it back to the Strategic Planning Committee, and I appreciate being here. Thank you.
If I could just, I have to my left, Mike Layton is my assistant. And as you guys might guess, there's not much that goes on in my world that doesn't include Mike, because he really is the foot soldier that takes care of running the council day to day. He's not made comments here today, but I want you to know how important he is to me and the things that he does that makes me appreciate him more every day. And things, just believe me this, when you call the district council, you're not going to speak to me 9 times out of the 10, because I'm not there, or I'm on the road, or I'm doing a lot of other things. And Mike is the gentleman you'll be dealing with, and he does a great job actually affecting the efficiency of the district council.